There we go, the magic hour, 7 o'clock. Tansi, Tawau, Candice Savage Nitsikason, Kiwik no Kochinia, Maga Misasquatumani Kinwasis Nawikan, Aga Maskik Nawaga Maganak, Maga Mina, Askiochiu Squeo Omania, E Pisque sta Ma Kayan Anots, Wild About Saskatoon. Hello and welcome. It's so lovely to be in your presence tonight, even virtually. My name is Candice Savage, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the first Nature City Conversation of 2026, sponsored as always by Wild About Saskatoon. I introduced myself tonight first in Nehiawewen or Cree with gratitude to my teachers, especially Dr. Charlotte Ross and Sainapan Thunder. And I did this as a reminder that I'm speaking to you from Treaty 6 territory, the homeland of many nations, including the Nehiyaw, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. So whether you are Indigenous or non-Indigenous like me, we all share a responsibility to care for one another and for these lands with all the plants, insects, mammals, and other beings who share life with us here. Our focus tonight is birds, especially urban birds, though not my budgies, who you may be able to hear behind me. I promise to keep them safe. Birds face many threats in cities, but the good news is that there's a lot that we can do to make our cities more hospitable to them. And here tonight to bring us both sides of the news, the threats and what we can do, are two members of Saskatoon's newly formed Bird Friendly City team, Jan Shadick of Living Sky Wildlife Rehabilitation and Mercy Harris, who is the secretary of the Saskatoon Nature Society. And we also have the good fortune to be joined by Angela Tremka, who is the coordinator of Bird Friendly Regina, our sister city and organization to the south, who are leading the way on this work. We'll hear from all our speakers, and then we'll have 10 or 15 minutes at the end for questions and comments. And if you have questions or things you want to add, could you please put them in the chat, which you will find at the bottom of your screen. Now, but that is all the introduction that is necessary, and it is time for me to hand the microphone over to Jan, who I see has been joined by her cat. Jan, please take it away. We need you to, yeah, there you go.
I've got it unmuted and I'm going to hit share screen and we are actually going to start with a few things from Mercy. Let's see. How does that look? Is that
Looks
good,
great.
Mercy?
Thanks. Thanks, Jan. That looks perfect.
All right.
I'll just tell you when to flip.
Okay.
So hi everyone. Thank you so much for turning out this Thursday evening to learn a little bit more about urban birds. So like Candace said, Jan, Angela, and I have a three-part webinar for you. But before we dive into Jan's part to start, just wanted to give a little bit of a general introduction to lay the scene for what all three of us are going to be talking about this evening. So next slide, please. Perfect. So put simply, our goal with you here over the next 45 minutes or so is to introduce bird-friendly city efforts that are taking place here in Saskatoon right now. So next slide, please. It's important to start with what we actually mean by bird friendly, because you're going to hear this phrase a lot tonight. So, just simply, if we're using bird friendly as an adjective, it just means an action, policy, or anything that promotes the well being of wild birds. Now, if you see bird friendly city capitalized throughout the presentations tonight, that's something related to the idea of bird friendly, but a little bit different. So, Bird Friendly City is a certification program run by Nature Canada, which is a nonprofit organization. And Nature Canada, in collaboration with its partners and its funders, established this certification program as a way of taking the idea of that there are bird friendly actions that we can all do and saying, hey, if a community, whether it's large or small, whether it's in BC or Yukon, Newfoundland, or wherever, if there are these shared actions that places are taking, we should be able to recognize these communities as being a place where birds do well, places that are bird friendly cities. So, next slide, Jan. Perfect. That shows that to date, there have been 35 communities all across Canada that have been certified as being bird friendly communities. And we are hoping that Saskatoon will become one of them. Next slide. The need for this sort of bird-friendly community action is really quite pressing. It's estimated that since 1970, we've lost about 3 billion birds in North America. There's 3 billion fewer birds today than there were 50 years ago. And if you click the animation, Jan, you'll see that, yes, unfortunately, here in the prairie region, we are amongst the ones that have had the greatest losses for birds. You'll see a 53% loss of prairie or native grassland birds since 1970 here. So there's a particular need for us to be thinking about our birds here in Saskatchewan. If you can go perfect, and then to the next slide. So as a result of this need, this really pressing need, especially here in the prairies, Bird Friendly Saskatoon is a volunteer organization that has been founded with 4 partner organizations to help work toward the goal of having Saskatoon be a bird-friendly city. The idea being that these members of this group see bird-friendly certification as a tool to help recognize what's already being done for birds in our community and also help carry that momentum forward and have even more in terms of advocacy for birds, policies that are nature focused and conservation minded. Next slide, please. So this evening, Jan will start off by talking about, her experience as a wildlife rehabilitator and some of the threats that birds and urban wildlife face. Then I will come back in about 15 minutes to talk about the bird-friendly city and how we can hopefully use it as a tool to address those threats that Jan talked about and advance bird conservation. And then if you flip the slide once more, Angela will wrap us up with sort of information about what we can look towards once Saskatoon hopefully is a bird-friendly city based on her experiences in Regina. So with that, I will hand it over to Jan for her first part.
All right. Thank you so much, Mercy, for that introduction, and to Candace for hosting this amazing webinar. All right. I get to talk about urban wildlife, and so I'm going to cover a whole bunch of different pieces. I've been doing wildlife rehabilitation here in the city for over 25 years now, so we've kind of seen it all from across the province. And so I have 15 minutes to kind of run through this very quickly. A lot of people tend to think that urban wildlife is an oxymoron, that cities are built for people. I would argue that. I like to tell Saskatoon city people that the health of the wildlife in our city speaks to the health of our living in the city as well. Most animals are wildlife sentinels, if you will. And so if they can't live here, we probably shouldn't or couldn't. And so there are a whole bunch of different creatures that live in the city. And whenever I look at the Nextdoor app and all kinds of things, people seem to be absolutely shocked that there are all of these animals in the city. Birds in particular, thankfully, get to live in the city. I think that sometimes we take them for granted. And we don't think about how amazing they are because we take them for granted. So if there's a coyote, there's an, oh my goodness, save your child. If it's a bird, it's like, oh yeah, it's just a bird. We expect them, we're not really paying attention to the impact that we have on them, which is why we have 1 in 8 bird species are threatened. 1,400 are declining. There's a huge number of different threats. And the worst one, unfortunately, tends to be our cats. I love my cat. He's great. He lives indoors, so he's not allowed to go out and catch the bunnies. They are behind habitat loss, the greatest threat to our birds and our small mammals, urban and otherwise. They get dumped off in the country all the time, and so they are a huge issue. Um, so keep your cats indoors, they stay safer, and the birds stay a lot safer. The second unfortunate threat to birds in our particularly urban communities are windows. This is the, unfortunate outline of a bird that has struck a window here in Saskatoon. And this is what our windows look like to the birds. They have absolutely no idea that there's glass involved, that it is not just a beautiful reflection of a tree that they can fly into. I have done dozens of presentations about windows, and will continue to do that. It's a huge point of advocacy in terms of our bird friendly city component. So it's a huge issue. Glass is an ongoing threat. We talk a lot about nighttime pollution, light pollution, and we have a light pollution abatement representative, Rick, on the committee, which is fantastic. The light pollution is not just bad for birds that get caught in the light and exhausted and fall to the ground, and sometimes they die. All those little lines that you see in the lights are actually birds flying through it, and a lot of them get trapped in the light. Just they're blinded just as we are. When they land on the ground, they get predated. They're tired, they're exhausted, they've used up their fat reserves from migration, and the predators are right there ready to jump on them. FLAP in Toronto has a fantastic program. I can't say enough good about them. And we would do well to emulate them and have a lot more volunteers out there looking for our tired and exhausted birds and our window strike birds. Because they migrate at night, they get trapped by the lights and stuck in the city. But light pollution also affects humans. Again, sentinels. The animals are the sentinels for the human. And so birds and humans and trees are also very much impacted by light pollution. So if we can fix it for the birds, we're going to have all of this wonderful impact on our trees so that they stop growing funny. Wildlife and birds are waking up at night and starting to sing at odd times. There's all kinds of impacts on the different wildlife around us. So that is a big part. Unfortunately, we all use our cars to get from point A to B, and the wildlife suffers the consequences. When you look at car versus wildlife, generally the car kind of wins. And that's very unfortunate for the wildlife. We get a huge number of car-struck animals, and sometimes they are not completely broken, and sometimes they are. So it's a big threat. One of the things that we found, she's actually holding up some PPE during COVID, is that garbage is a huge threat to our wildlife. And there's a lot more research going on about that. It's not just PPE. It's a lot of it is the plastics and the microplastics. Believe it or not, animals ingest that. They feed it to their babies, and so the accumulation of microplastics and general things like that in our wildlife, as much as in our bodies, is a real problem. So it's garbage, and along with that is additional garbage that directly impacts the wildlife that we have seen. Somebody left their fishing line behind, and thankfully, I believe this robin made it, but it was rough going for that robin. Trapping. Some of the trapping, the entrapment, is accidental, like the garbage, but some of it is intentional. These particular creatures in these pictures were not the intended targets. So there are lots of secondary targets to what we are putting out to try and trap things that we find inconvenient. But these animals are not necessarily inconvenient and are getting caught by these traps. So whether it is fly traps or snap traps or the sticky traps for the mice, even those fly traps that you hang, we've had birds come in that were stuck to those. So trapping, whether it is intentional or unintentional, can be a problem. Intentional trapping of wildlife in the spring is a huge problem because you end up leaving lots of babies behind that we either end up having to rehabilitate or they just die because nobody finds them. Relocating an animal is 50-50 at best, and relocating something in the spring is a huge liability, and there's a 90% chance that they're not going to make it. If you put me in Toronto, I would probably be completely lost because it's such a huge place, and I don't know where to find food and shelter and who the predators are, and so I would probably not make it either if you put me in some random strange place. Um, Poison. Unfortunately, we have communities here in Saskatoon that use poison. Their little green things are tossed down into these rodent holes and the gophers eat them. And we have advocated to try and ban these kinds of poisons in the city because there are the other animals in the city, the great horned owls, the foxes, the coyotes, the raccoons, the skunks. And again, you're going to end up with your secondary victims from this particular kind of poisoning. There is also avitrol poisoning, which unfortunately people don't really like pigeons and the droppings that they bring, which I completely understand. And we have exclusion devices at my house, and we have lots of exclusion devices that we can recommend. They also, unfortunately, they die from their neurotoxin, and we have actually received peregrines who have been suffering from the same neurotoxin, having eaten a pigeon and ingested sufficient amounts that they also were then suffering the same outcomes. And so they did not make it. Power lines. We need our power. Unfortunately, the power lines, when they're above ground, cause huge problems to our raptors. We see them because we're looking up against a blue sky, but our raptors cannot see them from above, and they look down and they just sort of swoop down, and they all sorts of different parts of their bodies get very much broken and injured in that process. So the more that we can put these lines underground, the better off for the birds, even though lots of them like to roost on them. This happens to be oil and a really sad looking owl that was dunked in a whole bunch of oil. And it really doesn't matter if it is a petroleum based oil or if it is a restaurant oil. If somebody forgets to close the lid on that big vat of oil, then we risk having birds that are going to be caught in that oil. And it's about a 50-50 chance when we wash them. One of the things I guess that I really want to highlight is that might be, one fox or one owl or one ground squirrel or whatever it is, but the secondary victims are the young ones or the future babies. Maybe that was a female, and that means that that 2-year-old fox is not going to have any more babies for the next few years, or that owl was incubating eggs that are not going to survive. And so it's not just the individual creature, it is the entire ecosystem, and we rely as much on that ecosystem as anything in living in the city. And so it's a huge piece. And so the idea for bird friendly cities is that if we can make it friendly for birds, then it's probably friendly for the other animals as well.
How do
And
I
if
turn
it's
it
friendly
off?
for them, then
Yeah.
it's going to be friendly for us. And that's where I want to live. I want to live in a place where all of the other two and four-legged, furred and feathered creatures can live, because that means that I can live here. So I'm going to pass the baton over to Miss Mercy. So I will stop sharing my screen. Hopefully I talked fast enough to cover my talk in my little tiny space of time.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jan. I'll just get myself set up here and get that shared. All right. I'm going to build off what Jan just sort of laid the groundwork for us by talking about, now we've had an introduction to what are the threats that urban birds and other wildlife face. I'm going to give the perhaps more optimistic part of the talk and talk about how we, both as individuals and as a community, can really do a lot. So I'm going to talk about the Bird Friendly City program and the efforts underway by Bird Friendly Saskatoon volunteers to move our city in the direction where we can be that type of place that Jan wants to live in. So I said this at the top, but in case you joined late or just as a reminder, the Bird Friendly City program that I'm going to be talking about is a certification organized by Nature Canada that recognizes municipalities that are really taking proactive steps to help wild birds. Now, that's sort of the high level overview, but what does a bird friendly city actually look like? So great, we have the certification program. What are we actually aiming for when we say a bird-friendly city? Well, I want to spend the next couple minutes going through sort of the characteristics that we want to be working toward. And you're going to hear the word bird a lot over the next 5 minutes or so. But I want you to just keep in mind, even if you're not a bird person first, that really bird-friendly city characteristics benefit all wildlife. So if you're a more of a mammal person, you can think about how Jan talked about cats being a threat to small mammals as well as birds. Think about how policies that help protect birds from that will also help protect a lot of mammals. Or if you're a native plant person, think about how things related to bird habitat also go hand in hand with protecting native plants and native vegetation in our urban areas. So don't want you to think that this only benefits birds. But with that sort of preface, let's dive into what characteristics a bird-friendly city has. The first thing really directly relates to what Jan was talking about, which is in a bird-friendly city, it's a place where the threats to birds are effectively reduced. It's really not realistic to talk about eliminating threats to birds because there's always going to be something. But a bird-friendly city is a place where there are actions taken to try and mitigate the problems that birds and other urban wildlife face. So, what this could look like in practice is many different things. Maybe it's a place where you have bylaws on free roaming cats, and those bylaws are enforced to try and reduce that pressure. Maybe with respect to the issue of birds colliding with windows, there are policies requiring certain buildings to have mitigation. So, for example, in this picture, you see those dot decals that will prevent a bird from seeing it as a true reflection of that tree or that bush. Policies like that can make a huge impact. Just as a hot off the press example, in 2024, the city of Winnipeg required or passed a regulation requiring buildings in certain corridors of the city to have bird-friendly window practices. So mitigation to prevent strikes or inbuilt bird-friendly glass to prevent it. And after about a year, there was grumbling in certain parts of the community about we want to try and repeal this regulation. It's an onerous regulation, but the folks in Manitoba and Bird Friendly Winnipeg did a fantastic job at getting the public to come out, and as a result, that bird friendly requirement for bird friendly glass has been retained. So that's a wonderful example from our friends in Manitoba about, how a city can go about trying to reduce a threat. The next characteristic of a bird-friendly city that's a big one is that, nature is prioritized for restoration and protection so that birds have places that they can thrive. We're fortunate in Saskatoon that we already have, sort of a leg up on a lot of other places because we do have a lot of natural habitat in certain parts of our city. Of course, we have the river corridor, but we also have some parts of Saskatoon that are managed as natural areas or naturalized parks. So on the left here, you see a picture of Donna Birkmeyer Park, which is in the east part of the city. And as you can see, it has apartments, it has buildings around it, but the park itself is managed with a lot of care to native vegetation, protecting habitat, and as a result, you have species like red-necked grebes that you wouldn't ordinarily have in an urban area who can still persist and who can still thrive thanks to this sort of nature-minded management of certain parks. The next two characteristics of a bird-friendly city that I want to touch on really go hand in hand. So, first of all, you have organizations and community groups that are actively working to help protect birds, and you have individual residents who are engaging with birds, appreciating them, and maybe even doing some work to help monitor, help protect them themselves. As an example of what this could look like at an organizational level, you have groups like Wild About Saskatoon, like the Saskatoon Nature Society, that have efforts that are ongoing. This is a picture from the Saskatoon Nature Society's bluebird and tree swallow nest box trails that they maintain, where every summer they go out and they monitor the chicks that are being raised in those boxes and they bring members of the public along. They bring young kids out, get them outside to teach them about birds, show them what these bird nests and these nestlings are like. So that's a great example of, the presence of organizations that are found in bird-friendly cities. At an individual level, it can also mean individuals taking action on their own to help protect birds. So this is a graphic from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology that highlights a lot of the things that Jan talked about that we can all do in our individual lives to help birds. And this is maybe a bit of a side tangent there, but I do want to point out this coffee related thing that you see in the purple circle there. So a lot of us are coffee drinkers. And what a lot of folks maybe don't realize is that coffee and birds are actually really closely linked. Because if you think about the birds that are here in the summer, they leave in the winter when it gets cold. And where do they go in the winter? Most of our migratory birds go to Latin America, and a lot of them spend time in tropical forests. Tropical forests is also where a lot of coffee gets grown. Now, the interesting thing is that coffee plants don't need to be grown in the full sun. They can do really well in the shade, but unfortunately, a lot of the time that doesn't matter, and the tropical forest ends up getting cleared to make coffee plantations anyway. But if you seek out coffee that is either labeled as shade grown or is labeled as being bird friendly certified, that means the coffee was grown in the understory of the tropical forest in a way that it didn't remove all those tropical trees, and that the birds that are overwintering in those areas still have those nice tree habitats where they can live and thrive and do what they need to do during the winter time. So that's something that I think I only recently learned about and a lot of people don't know about. But, for a daily habit that has a direct impact on birds, that's a way that we as individuals can all make a bit of a difference for birds positively. But tangent aside, that brings me to the last characteristic of a bird-friendly city that I want to highlight, which is that there are municipal policies aimed at protecting urban birds. This could take many forms. It kind of relates back to the idea of things like bylaws for window protections, but it can also include other things like having cities that promote or at least tolerate people who naturalize their lawn, who plant lots of native plants in their yard because native plants at the end of the day are where urban birds get their food. It also could take the form of tree planting policies. Here in Saskatoon, we're lucky that we have a city that encourages tree planting to enhance the tree canopy. Of course, that provides habitat for birds, but it also provides benefits like reducing urban heat island effect. And this policy is forward thinking enough that they allow people who have property adjacent to, city right of ways or city boulevards to request trees to be planted. So this is the sort of thing that can, be a forward-looking urban policy that helps promote birds and their welfare. So together, these characteristics really form the vision of what the volunteers at Bird Friendly Saskatoon hope that our city can become. And just as an outline briefly of where Bird Friendly Saskatoon is in this process, I just want to remind you this is work that is all being done by volunteers who are trying to work toward this bird friendly city certification, getting our city to have those characteristics. It is an entirely volunteer led effort. Currently, we're sort of at two phases in the process. So, first of all, we are researching what bird-friendly practices already exist. So, what is already out there in terms of community groups, in terms of bylaws. But we're also, identifying what gaps exist and trying to work with the city and work with the community to fill those gaps and get Saskatoon on a path to addressing those issues. So, as an example of what this engagement involves, Bird Friendly Saskatoon, one of our projects that we've started undertaking, is addressing issues of window collisions. On the left side, you see a picture of a row of windows at City Hall. And unfortunately, City Hall, our flagship building for the city of Saskatoon, is a hotspot for bird collisions with windows. Every year, especially during fall migration, dozens of birds fatally collide with this array of windows. And we've been involved with trying to raise the issue of these collisions to city administration, the sustainability department, and hopefully this spring we will be getting some decals installed on those windows to reduce the number of collisions, but also to demonstrate to other buildings that might have similar problems that, hey, there is an easy solution to this problem. This is what being a leader with bird-friendly practices can look like. Another gap that we're looking to fill is appreciation of our migratory birds. Here in Saskatoon, we're actually located on a flyway, which is sort of like a super highway for birds when they migrate south up to Canada for the summer. And we want to help in the spring when these migratory birds are coming through, following the river valley as a route for their travels. We want people to get out and learn a little bit more and help appreciate these birds a little bit more. So we're working on migratory bird day plans. For this coming spring, because we saw that as a gap that we can work toward filling. Of course, as we are doing these projects, undertaking these efforts, we aren't losing sight of the fact that ultimately we do have to fill out an application and try and have Saskatoon officially recognized and certified as a bird-friendly city. Hopefully, these efforts we are doing will help push it along in that direction. So we are, of course, continuing to work on that process of the actual application. But what happens once Saskatoon is hopefully one day actually certified as a bird-friendly city? Here's where I'll turn it over to Angela to take us to Regina and show us a little bit about what we can hopefully look forward to.
Thank you so much, Mercy. I will share my screen now. I'm going to be building off of Mercy's presentation and Jan's and talk about what it's like being a bird-friendly city. So let me switch these around. There, that should look good. All right. Okay, so my favorite,
Angela,
yeah.
right now we're seeing your
Oh,
main,
it's backwards. Yeah, I see
your
that.
main screen.
I should be able to just switch that around. Oops. Swap. There we go.
There we go.
Thank you.
Well done.
All right. So my favorite thing to do is to learn and talk about birds. So I'm definitely in my happy place today. I'm the coordinator of Bird Friendly Regina, and I've been on the committee since 2022 when Regina first became a certified bird friendly city. I've worked in wildlife rehabilitation settings for a few years, and I am currently a bird bander with Nature Saskatchewan and Owl Moon. And through all of these roles, I get to learn about and share ways that we can all understand, respect, coexist with, and value wildlife and the nature that surrounds us. So I'm going to spend a few minutes tonight taking you behind the scenes of a bird-friendly city, sharing some of our successes, our challenges, and what's on the horizon, and explore why being a bird-friendly city is an ongoing effort that benefits birds, people, and the places that we share. So getting designated as a bird-friendly city, as Mercy was talking about, is a huge undertaking and accomplishment. We must show that our municipality has reached these certain standards in these categories that Mercy was talking about in order to become certified. And that is the first step. Once you're certified, the work does not stop there. It's not like, hey, we have become certified, we're bird friendly, work is done. That's kind of one of the starting points. We have to recertify every couple of years to show our city's progress, and so that's a little bit of what I'm going to be going through here. Once we were officially certified, the fun began. First thing we did when we became designated was hold our official bird competition. We had local bird experts from the area narrow down the list of birds to 6 that are common in Regina. Each of these birds here were assigned to a local celebrity who was interviewed on CBC radio, and the City of Regina website held the voting platform. And people were really excited about this. It got people interested in birds, or at least like noticing the different birds in our city a little more than they had before. We had over 21,000 votes. And so that was really exciting for us. It was a kind of a neat way to be like, hey, we are officially a bird friendly city. And now we get to have an official bird. And the winner was the black-capped chickadee. It is the most popular city bird in Canada, so a lot of cities have this as their official bird. And to celebrate this special bird, artist Madison Pascal painted Melody of the Seasons to help represent our community's commitment to increasing awareness about bird-friendly Regina and the importance of creating these bird-friendly urban environments. This painting was donated to City Hall, and it's currently on display throughout different meeting rooms, sometimes the main lobby. And so this is just one of those important reminders that there is a lot of work that we do behind the scenes, but to keep it fun, keep it community driven, build positive relationships, and celebrate all of these wins, no matter how small. And community art is a really great way to do that. So this Bird Friendly Regina was spearheaded by 2 organizations that have worked really hard over the past 4 years, along with so many other volunteers, Nature Saskatchewan and Nature Regina. So I just wanted to give them a shout out first of all here. I want to talk about how we work and past challenges. As a volunteer-driven committee, there was a year where everyone who was on the committee was a bit bogged down with other work, other life demands. So we had to be flexible in slowing down and then building up when the capacity was there again and going with the flow. Same thing with working alongside the City of Regina. So there was a year where we moved on to 5 different staff's portfolios just due to turnover. And we're in a really strong spot now, but this happens sometimes, especially when there's like, say, a city election. So that has happened. We've welcomed a new mayor, new councilors, different staff. And so sometimes you have to rebuild some of those relationships. And that also brings to mind community partnerships. Never underestimate the importance of a conversation. Those conversations are seeds that we're planting, and sometimes we need to plant that seed again and have that conversation again, and that's okay. This year, what we're trying is something a little bit new to help Bird Friendly Regina grow a little bit. We have this new tiered system for folks to join and give room for people to change their involvement as life fluctuates. So this information can be found on regina.ca/bird, our website. And we've broken things down into committee members, which is a high level of commitment. We have community partners and advisors, and then just general members to stay connected and informed. We borrowed this idea from another bird-friendly city that had great success with this, so we thought let's give this a try too. So please check it out. Even if you are in Saskatoon, check out our website. We have a lot of information there, and it's just good to keep up to date with our sister cities and make sure that we're learning from each other. So I'm going to emphasize once again, celebrate along the way. I think the first 2 years we didn't do much in the way of celebrating, and small things add up to big impacts. We haven't solved all the problems. We have a lot of work to do, but regardless of those bumps in the road, slow progress is still progress. And we are aiming for progress, not perfection. So in 2024, we were awarded Conservation Partner of the Year by Nature Canada. And that was a really good moment for us to just like sit back and be like, okay, we're doing things are happening. And when we celebrate, we bring back that motivation and that excitement again. So I just have to really emphasize how important it is for your group to take time and celebrate the small wins, because they really do add up. So the first step to getting people interested and excited about wildlife and nature is education and outreach. In order for people to start understanding their impact, why wildlife is important, and how it benefits human well-being, the problems that wildlife face and how we can be a part of the solutions, we have to be out in the community educating. So we do this in a lot of ways, as you can see in these different photos. We participate in Migratory Bird Day with lots of partner organizations, same with the Christmas bird count. We've done interviews with local radio shows. We celebrate birds through our social media. And then we've also partnered with the city of Regina to have permanent signs made in 15 park spaces around Regina. And this will, it helps increase awareness about those simple actions that we can all do to help create bird-friendly urban environments. So it's similar to those 7 actions that we saw. It's just a little bit more Regina focused for what we viewed our needs are at this moment. So it's really cool that we can be walking in the park and see that sign and see like, oh, hey, we are a bird-friendly city, and these are some things that we can do to help our birds. So what's next? This is not a one-time designation, as I mentioned. Bird-friendly cities have to reapply to show improvements, challenges, how we overcame those challenges, and the changes every couple of years. And so this is an ongoing commitment. We're on year 4. We've had to recertify, and there's so many areas that need to be addressed. And sometimes that becomes a little bit overwhelming when you're like, what is the priority area? But sometimes when it comes to prioritizing, it makes sense to see what is already happening in the community that fits one of the priorities that we're after. So this year, we are starting the year focusing on cats. The Regina Animal Bylaw is being updated. There has been a focus on dogs in November last year, but there hasn't been any mention of cats yet. So this is an opportunity for us to ensure that cats are included in this animal bylaw with a balanced approach of education and enforcement to keep cats safe and save birds' lives. We could talk about this for a whole webinar, but I am going to move on from that. What's next for us as well? Habitat protection. So this is something else that came up here. So it's another focus for us in 2026. There is a proposal to extend a roadway through protected conservation land. And this is something that is really worrisome. So we're going to be working on this. And sometimes you don't choose the priority areas, they choose you. What's next? An area of challenge for us over the past few years has been finding bird-friendly businesses that are promoting those bird-friendly practices. So we're going to try to make some partnerships here this year. We're going to tell folks what different bird-friendly areas are and see if any businesses are working on those areas or if they're interested in working on those areas. And then with our university, so we're working on getting the biology undergrad and graduate society bugs involved in some window monitoring at the university. We're also working with the Archer Library on a display and event that covers spring and fall migration, bringing together community and university. And then we're part of other events at the university, like the upcoming Wetlands Fest, talking about window collisions. We also have reached out to our city hall with the window issue, and that has been a little bit tough. So we would love to work with Saskatoon to learn with and from you guys, and maybe later on this year, both of our city halls will install some kind of decals to prevent those window strikes from happening. So we're really excited to work along with you. Final thoughts from me, this has been mentioned, when birds and their habitats are healthy and cared for, everybody benefits. When we help birds, we're helping make healthy communities for people and wildlife. Please follow us. We're on social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook. You can visit our website if you have any questions, suggestions, you want to become involved, you want to contact us, the email's there. Thank you so much for having me spend this time with you. I'm going to pass it on to Mercy now, who's going to help wrap up our webinar, and then we will open it up to questions.
All right, I'm here one final time just to sort of end with a few takeaways that we hope you remember from tonight, a few final thoughts. So if you can go to the next slide, please. We hope that you've learned and that you take away from all three of us that urban birds deserve our attention. Urban birds and all urban wildlife face numerous threats, but there really is a lot that we can do both as individuals and as a community to help birds and make our own communities better in the process. So here in Saskatoon, Bird Friendly Saskatoon is working towards getting our bird friendly city goals accomplished so that we can hopefully in the future be certified. Don't forget about the individual actions that you can take on your own to address some of those things that Jan talked about. Next slide. And then from Angela, we heard, sort of what we can become, some of these awesome projects that we can work toward, whether it's outreach and education, whether it's tackling these threats and challenges as they come up. There's always progress to be made. We don't have to be perfect, and really just chipping away at things as you go is a great way to just sort of keep ourselves moving forward. So next slide for one last time. So yes, we are going to close out. I'll give you my shameless pitch. Once again, Bird Friendly Saskatoon, we are a volunteer organization, and volunteers is really like our limiting factor for what we can do. So if any part of you, if any of you resonated with any part of this presentation, we'd love to have your support for the projects we have on the go. Like I talked about, we are involved with bird window collision prevention, and we're going to be continuing to sort of plan out some ideas for World Migratory Bird Day. One of the cool things that we're just sort of starting is, in addition to the classic dot decals that you put on windows, we're trying to get some funding to do anti-collision window art at City Hall, like you see in that middle picture there. And we think that's a really cool way to engage artists, engage the community, and make buildings safer for birds. So whether your passion is art or advocacy or educating people or getting kids out in nature, we would love to hear from you. We are on social media, just like Bird Friendly Regina is. You're free to email us at any time. Whatever your passion is or your interest is, we would really be happy to hear from you. So with that, I'll turn it back to Candace for the rest of the time we have together.
That's a fabulous presentation, set of presentations. Yes, I hope you're seeing all the explosions of applause and love rising up all the sunbursts. Um, Angela, you said at one point, never underestimate the value of a conversation. Well, never underestimate the value of a rocking Zoom presentation is what what I have to say about that. Um, you've made the threats to birds very real and emotional for us. And more than that, you've made this whole possibility of positive action creative and joyful. And yeah, so I'm sure there are people here who will now want to join, who will now want to join. We have in the chat, so I put in a couple of notes myself. One note is one piece of good news is that Saskatoon, like Hamilton, which Mercy referenced, does encourage natural gardens and native plant gardening. And so in the chat, you'll find the link to Saskatoon's guidelines, trying to make things very clear and provide lots of permissions for us to provide habitat on our balconies or boulevards or backyards, whatever we have accessible. There are a couple of questions in the chat, both related. One is simply, will you be talking about dark skies? And the other is, how do you go around your neighborhood in a diplomatic way to get people to dim their lights? What a very good question. Who would like to tackle that?
I can take a stab at it, but Angela and Jan feel free to add on. So, dark lights and light pollution actually is a key part of the Bird Friendly City certification program, because that is considered a threat to birds, like Jan was talking about, with lights being quite disorienting, especially during migration. So we didn't talk about it too much today, but the Saskatoon Light Abatement Committee does support our work, and Rick, I think, is in the audience here today, so he's very keen on that. In terms of talking to your neighbors, I think the first thing I would try and understand is why they have, excessive outdoor lighting. I think for a lot of people, it's seen as a way of deterring crime, of promoting security. And I believe that the benefits in terms of crime reduction are often overhyped. I don't think there's a lot of scientific evidence supporting that. So I think maybe one approach would be, if security is the concern and that's why it's so prevalent in your neighborhood, maybe just trying to do a little bit of research and arm yourself with some fast facts about, perhaps the misconceptions. But if there's other root causes, I would say just understand those, and maybe even pull in some of the detrimental things that artificial light has for human health, because we're knowing more and more that artificial light can be disruptive to humans as well.
That's super well put. And I will just add on to that, Mercy, that something that I've done in my community is like, how do I reach my neighbors and a little bit beyond for lights and for window strikes and caps and all of these different things is sometimes in our I don't know if you're a part of perhaps your Facebook community group. Sometimes I'll post some, the 7 simple steps there. Another thing that our neighborhood has is a community newspaper. And so sometimes we'll get an article in there that just talks about ways that we can make our community more bird friendly, and talk about it in a really positive way and make it an exciting thing. Like, can you imagine if our community is like the leading community in making in having bird friendly practices? How cool would that be? And so really making it positive, as opposed to having any negative connotations to that.
Did you want to add anything, Rick?
Well, if I'm put on the spot, I suppose. I was just going to type into the chat. A dark backyard has so many benefits, and it's something you can bring up with your neighbors. It does reduce crime. It increases pollinators in your backyard. It provides habitats for every type of wildlife that you can have: butterflies, birds, small animals. And the city kind of recognizes that. We actually do have a dark sky policy in the city but it really refers more to civic developments and doesn't yet extend to residential or industrial. So it's one thing that we want to be working on a little bit, is seeing if the city would get on board with having some sort of better regulations to at least recognize that a dark backyard is something that's really, really friendly. And also, uh, probably close to a decade now, when the buildings were being developed in on parcel YY in downtown Saskatoon, the high glass towers. Jan and I were involved in getting the designers to redesign the buildings to add trunnions on the outside so that there would be some breakup of the windows. And so our application will also talk about the city's progress towards having design standards for their building bylaw that is bird friendly to prevent collisions.
Thanks, Rick. John, you have your hand up. Where did you go? Oh, there
I'm
you
right here.
are.
Thank you guys so much. That's been really, really very interesting. And, I sure hope Saskatoon can achieve that bird-friendly status. I think we have a way to go, but it's so instructive to hear about Regina's example. I just wanted to mention this shade-friendly coffee. As a coffee drinker myself, I've tried looking for shade-friendly coffee in Saskatoon, and it's not easy to find. And there's it doesn't really seem to be a standalone certification that has achieved wide currency. So Nature Canada sells Avia coffee from their website. So, maybe it's going to come down to buying 10 pounds of coffee for $300 or something from Nature Canada and getting it shipped. The standard seems to be Smithsonian label or Smithsonian endorsed, but you find a lot of roasteries will say, "Oh yeah, we do bird friendly," but the Smithsonian thing is nowhere to be seen, or they say we believe in that and we try to get a lot of bird friendly coffee, but you never know what percentage is actually from there. So I'm going to try this Avia stuff. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah,
Thanks again.
thanks for adding that. And yes, it's the Smithsonian Bird Friendly Coffee certification is really like the gold standard in terms of that your coffee is coming from a place that is preserving bird habitat. Unfortunately, yeah, it's not super available. Another company that I'm just familiar with is Birds and Beans. I have no dog in the fight, but I'll just pop their link in the chat as well. But yeah, thanks for raising that, John.
Well, now I'm thirsty too. Um, how could this possibly have happened? We have now spent an entire hour together considering some of these problems and possibilities. And I think we have to leave it at that for tonight. There's lots of opportunities for more discussion. Please do follow Bird Friendly YXC on social media. Thank you all again for coming tonight. I'd like to let you know that in 1 month, on February 20, oh, way down at the bottom of my page here, February 25th, we will have another in our short winter series of Nature City Conversations. This one is on the cost of urban sprawl. So very closely related subject, really, when you consider the importance of natural areas to birds and other wildlife, and including people. Um, and also very timely when you consider the upcoming application of Saskatoon land to create a new subdivision between the Northeast and Small Swales in the northeast portion of Saskatoon. So we're looking forward to learning from Derek Cameron of Strong Towns about the real cost of that kind of suburban development. So February 25th, we hope to see you all here again. This presentation has been recorded. The link will be available on the Wild About Saskatoon website in a day or two. So thank you all again very much. And well, happy birding. I guess I could turn off record any old time.